The 1980s. The Florida heat was suffocating, but nothing was hotter than the secrets that burned beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect family. For years, Judy Buenoano moved through her community with the charm of a doting wife and mother. But there was something sinister lurking beneath her friendly exterior. She said she was the perfect woman, but the perfect woman was a monster in disguise. Her web of lies would destroy everyone around her. And when they finally caught her, it was clear Judy was a black widow, leaving death in her wake. As we delve into this video, don't forget to like this video, share with friends, and subscribe to Murder Files for more delve into true crime cases. Judy Buenoano was not always a villain in the eyes of her community. In fact, many saw her as a loving wife and a devoted mother. But behind the facade, she was a calculated killer, methodically picking off her victims. Her first victim was James, who died suddenly in 1971. The authorities at the time attributed his death to a mysterious illness, but Judy's actions would soon suggest otherwise. She collected insurance money from his death, and it seemed like an ordinary tragedy. But it wasn't just James who would fall victim to her cruelty. Her son, Michael, became the next target. In 1980, he was severely injured in an explosion that nearly took his life. Judy's concern for her son seemed genuine, but as time passed, suspicion grew. Michael survived, but he was forever scarred, and Judy would again collect insurance money. And then there was Bobby, her final victim. Bobby was Judy's long-term boyfriend, and his death would be the one that would expose her twisted nature. He died of arsenic poisoning in 1983. By now, investigators were beginning to connect the dots. Something sinister was happening, but they couldn't quite grasp the full extent of her actions. They were husbands, sons, and lovers, said one investigator, and they all paid the ultimate price for trusting her. It wasn't until 1983, after Bobby's death, that authorities began to notice a disturbing pattern. Judy's life was filled with misfortune and tragedy, but the more they dug into her history, the more the deaths seemed eerily similar. Each time she'd collect an insurance payout. Investigators started to connect the dots when Judy's son Michael miraculously survived the explosion that almost killed him. He had been severely burned and required years of rehabilitation. But what stood out was the fact that the explosion occurred in Judy's home, and the circumstances were far too suspicious to ignore. Soon the detectives began to suspect something far more sinister than mere accidents or bad luck. They re-examined James's death from 1971 and noticed discrepancies in the medical records. A closer look at the toxicology reports revealed that Bobby's death was no accident either. In fact, it had all the signs of arsenic poisoning, a methodical and often lethal choice for someone trying to cover up murder. The breakthrough came when Michael, now older, revealed that his mother had been unusually cold during his recovery and that she had seemed more interested in his insurance payout than his well-being. The pieces were falling into place. Judy was a master at evading suspicion. But as investigators dug deeper, they found a much darker side to her personality. She was not just a woman who wanted to collect insurance money. She was a woman who harbored deep, disturbing psychological wounds. Born in 1943, Judy was raised in a difficult environment, experiencing severe abuse during her childhood. Her father was reportedly an alcoholic, and her mother was known to have a strained relationship with Judy. Growing up in such an environment may have contributed to the emotional detachment Judy exhibited later in life.
As a young woman, Judy entered into a series of troubled relationships, including her marriage to James, but it was her calm demeanor in the face of tragedy that stood out. While her victims' families mourned, Judy went about her life as though nothing had happened. Her ability to manipulate those around her was chilling. She convinced her friends, family, and even investigators that she was a loving wife and mother. To the outside world, she was a woman who had been through much hardship, but in reality, she was a cold-blooded killer, using her charm as a weapon to mask her true intentions. Her double life was perfectly executed. She was a predator, and yet she never looked the part. Judy Buenoano's method of murder was as calculated as it was cold. She didn't leave behind bloody crime scenes or violent outbursts. Instead, her killings were subtle, often disguised as accidents or illnesses, making it almost impossible for anyone to immediately suspect foul play. Her weapon of choice was arsenic, specifically arsenic. It's a slow, silent killer, and one that Judy wielded expertly. With it, she caused her victims' deaths to appear natural, blending them into the backdrop of life's little tragedies. James's death in 1971 had been written off as a sudden illness. A few years later, in 1980, she orchestrated an explosion in her home that nearly killed her son, Michael, in a bid to collect insurance money. While Michael survived, Judy's actions had left him scarred for life. But it wasn't until 1983, when Bobby, her boyfriend, fell victim to the same poison, that Judy's method became clear. Her first real mistake came when Bobby began to show signs of poisoning. The authorities took a deeper look at the case, and toxicology reports revealed high levels of arsenic in his system. Bobby's death wasn't just another tragedy. It was a sign that Judy had been at the center of a deadly pattern. But Judy wasn't done. She had carefully orchestrated each death, but her confidence grew with every kill. The pattern was undeniable, and it seemed like she was pushing the boundaries of what she could get away with. What set Judy apart from other serial killers wasn't just her method. It was her detachment. She viewed her victims not as human beings, but as mere pawns in her grand scheme. She didn't get emotionally involved in her murders, and instead she viewed them as a means to an end: money, control, and power. She wasn't in a rush to kill either. Each murder was meticulously planned, each step carefully executed. But as her confidence grew, so did her carelessness. She began to make small mistakes that would eventually expose her. It wasn't until the tragic death of Bobby in 1983 that the investigation into Judy Buenoano's crimes began in earnest. Up until then, her killings had been dismissed as unfortunate accidents or natural causes. But Bobby's death, with its telltale signs of arsenic poisoning, forced investigators to take a closer look. The breakthrough came when the detectives found an unexpected lead: Judy's background. She had once been involved in a suspicious car accident in which her ex-husband died. While his death had been ruled accidental at the time, the circumstances surrounding his death were now being re-examined. Detectives began to look deeper into Judy's history. They unearthed a troubling pattern of insurance claims filed in the wake of the deaths of her victims. She had been collecting large sums of money every time someone close to her died. But her string of deaths didn't stop there. She had applied for new life insurance policies for her remaining loved ones, including her son Michael, who had already survived one near-death experience. Detectives turned their attention to Judy's son, Michael. He was no longer a child, but a young man, and his survival of the explosion seemed almost too miraculous to be true. Michael revealed that Judy had shown a disturbing lack of concern for his well-being during his recovery, often focusing more on the insurance payout she would receive than on his emotional state. As investigators dug deeper, they began to piece together a chilling portrait of a woman who had, over the years, killed with chilling precision. They were now certain. Judy was the woman behind a string of murders, and she had been getting away with it for years. With new evidence in hand, the authorities began to close in on Judy, but she was a step ahead, constantly moving, hiding, and manipulating. The investigation had just begun, and they still didn't have enough to bring her to justice. After years of carefully evading suspicion, Judy Buenoano's web of lies began to unravel. The breakthrough came in 1984, when investigators finally gathered enough evidence to make an arrest. It wasn't just one piece of evidence, but a combination of toxicology reports, insurance claims, and survivor testimony that painted a grim picture of Judy's true nature. Authorities arrested her in Florida, charging her with the murder of Bobby, the boyfriend she had poisoned with arsenic. But this wasn't the only crime she was being investigated for. The authorities were now looking into the deaths of her first husband, James, and her son, Michael. The pieces were finally coming together. The trial that followed would captivate the nation. Judy's defense was as cold and calculated as her murders. She denied any wrongdoing, claiming that all the deaths were tragic accidents. But the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution argued that Judy had deliberately poisoned her victims over the years, all in the pursuit of insurance money. One of the most chilling moments during the trial came when a 911 call was played for the jury. It was a call made by Bobby before he died, in which he expressed his fear of Judy. The recording was a gut-wrenching moment for everyone involved, as it confirmed what the investigators had long suspected. Bobby knew he was in danger. During the trial, Judy's true nature was revealed in detail. Investigators presented testimonies from those closest to her, including her surviving son, Michael, who explained how his mother had shown little to no emotion after his horrific explosion accident. Michael's chilling revelation was the final nail in Judy's coffin. In 1985, after a highly publicized trial, Judy was found guilty of the murder of Bobby and was sentenced to death. The jury saw through her carefully crafted persona and found her guilty of poisoning, manipulation, and murder. Judy Buenoano's conviction in 1985 was a moment of relief for many. The woman who had terrorized her family, manipulated her community, and taken the lives of those closest to her was finally behind bars. But for the families of her victims, including her late husband James and boyfriend Bobby, the pain was no less severe. Many had believed Judy's facade, trusting her even as she siphoned money from them through life insurance policies. Their trust had been shattered, and their loved ones were gone, replaced by the cold reality of a woman who had destroyed everything for personal gain. Judy's arrest also led to changes in the way insurance companies evaluated claims. Her case raised questions about the loopholes in the system that allowed people like her to exploit the trust of their loved ones and profit from murder. Insurance fraud investigations became more stringent, and new procedures were put in place to catch potential offenders. While Judy's victims were left with their grief, her case had a significant impact on criminal law as well. Her crimes exposed a disturbing truth about the ease with which she could manipulate her way through the legal system. It was a stark reminder of how a person could wear a mask for years and deceive those closest to them. As for Judy herself, she spent the next 17 years in Florida's death row, where she became one of the state's most notorious female serial killers. Her time on death row was marked by her cold indifference to the gravity of her crimes. She showed no remorse, and as her death date drew closer, she remained unrepentant.
In 1998, Judy was executed by lethal injection, but her legacy of deceit, manipulation, and cold-blooded murder remained. Her case continues to be studied in criminal psychology as an example of how a person can mask their true nature behind a facade of normalcy, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Judy Buenoano's story is one of chilling manipulation, a woman who lived among us and deceived everyone, leaving a path of destruction in her wake. But the question remains, how many others like her are still out there, hiding in plain sight? If you found this story as gripping as we did, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more true crime documentaries every week. Stay alert, stay aware, and never stop questioning the truth. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about the way Judy was able to hide in plain sight for so long?
Let's keep the conversation going.